All right, so we are live. Sorry, you guys, that we're starting a little bit late. Like I was saying in the chat, we were having some sound issues. We think everything's settled right now, but this is our third and final virtual panel for this sort of fall. I don't know, like we were supposed to have Ice and Fire Con last weekend and we wanted to give everybody something. So we thought like 3 spooky Fridays in a row would be really fun. So tonight's sorry, I'm used to doing like webcasts. Tonight's panel is on the Curse of Harrenhal. And I'm Tara, by the way. I am the organizer, founder of Ice and Fire Con. Personally, I can be found across the web, that being like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at A Geek Saga. My fellow panelists are Elena, Wendy, Kevin, and Aziz. So you guys want to introduce yourselves in that order? That would be lovely. Elena, you go first.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elena, like she said. I am a member of the small council for Ice and Fire Con. I do a little bit of everything. Most of the time you just see me running around like a chicken with its head cut off. But you can find me on Twitter at the Bear Air, or you can find me on pretty much everything else as Chasing the Snitch.
Wendy?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy. You can find me on Twitter at the Wendy Nerd or at wendynerd@tumblr.com. I was an essayist for a while on A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm a Twitch streamer as well. You can find me on twitch.tv/WendyNerd. And I just really like A Song of Ice and Fire.
Kevin?
Hi. My name's Kevin. I am a volunteer for Ice and Fire Con. My Twitter is YoungNed or Song of Ice and Fire Puns. And that's about it.
Hey, y'all. I'm Aziz from History of Westeros podcast. I'm a huge fan of Ice and Fire Con, and I like talking about Harrenhal. So that's, let's do it. Let's talk about
I feel like Aziz is like, Aziz needs no introduction. We
know who you are, dude.
Everyone knows Aziz.
All right. So as we all know, Harrenhal, yes, as we all know, Harrenhal is, I guess, could you really call it the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms when it's like half melted right now? But like, I guess technically the amount of square footage or whatever they use in Westeros that it covers is the largest. It was the seat of House Went in the Riverlands, and it's located right near the God's Eye. It was burned by dragonfire, like I mentioned, during Aegon's conquest. So it's basically been cursed since then, I think is the general idea. Like, however, like the land around it is like is worth everything. You know what I mean? Like the castle itself might be cursed, but it's still really it's supposed to be the head of the Riverlands, technically. And it also has the best and most land in that area. So other than that, despite the fact that it was like burned, it's still a strong very much a stronghold. It still has its like outside walls and everything, and they are huge, which was kind of the point when it was originally built. They wanted it to be sort of they wanted it to be the biggest, the best. God, I could make so many political references right now, but I'm just not going to. But again, it became cursed very early on. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about maybe why, like how it became cursed and why it might have been like how somebody wanting that much power maybe kind of led to it becoming this sort of melted piece of shit.
Sort of like Westeros, actually. I think it's kind of a Black Mirror of the King's Landing in a lot of ways, and a Black Mirror of the Iron Throne.
That's a cool way to put it. I like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, should I elaborate or sorry?
I don't know. I was gonna say, like, well, and of course it is, or was, up until like obviously recent books, the seat of House Went, but it was built by Hair in the Black, who was an Ironborn. Correct? I'm not wrong there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're
It
right.
was the Iron
Okay.
King.
I was like, oh my God, I hope I'm not like misremembering that. Yeah. So, you know, kind of a sign, maybe one of the many signs that Ironborn shouldn't be landlubbers. But I don't know. So do you guys? I'll be completely honest. It's been a while since I read like World of Ice and Fire and read like the actual history of Harrenhal. So if you guys have any thoughts on it, like
I could do a
prior
rundown.
to- yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
That's a good thing to do. Set the stage a little here. So yeah, like y'all said, Harren the Black. First off, he was the third king of Isles in the Rivers. So he was kind of landlocked because they were starting to become more land oriented. He spent most of his life building this castle. So he had those roots, but they were trying to become more landlubbery. But like you said, it didn't work out. So maybe they should have stuck to the sea. Aegon gave the castle to House Coharis, so they were actually a Valyrian house. It was probably his master of arms, but one of them was really, really crappy. Like the second, his son, or I think it was his grandson actually, named Gargan the Guest, was like a real proponent of that whole first night nonsense, and he took it to the extreme. So he got his junk cut off by Harren the Red, who may or may not have actually had a relation to Harren the Black, but he was an outlaw and didn't actually hold the castle. It was next given to House Harroway. And Maegor ended House Harroway amidst all his, Maegor, we don't have to get into him, but, he was in a bad mood, basically. And then there's House Towers, who also got it from Maegor, and the Lord was named Maegor Towers after Maegor, but he was very poor and died with no heirs. Rhaena Targaryen, as in the Queen of the West for a time, was lived there and outlived Maegor Towers. She died 12 years later. Then House Strong got it. House Strong was probably the most powerful house to hold it. The name is appropriate, I guess. But during the Dance of the Dragons, that one-eyed guy, Aemond, the rider of Vhagar, he didn't like the Strongs, in part because, well, his half-brother was one and took his eye out. So he was kind of venting on them and killed pretty much all the Strongs. There was a few left over after all this, but not many. After the Dance of the Dragons, we had Alice Rivers, the Witch Queen of Harrenhal, which is a cool thing to call her, I think. And we don't really know what happened to her because that was kind of like the left as a cliffhanger at the end of Fire and Blood and isn't spoken of elsewhere. So we don't really know what the deal with her is, but clearly, she died off or something happened. It was empty for a good 15 to 20 years. I don't know how long because, again, we don't know what happened to her. But in 151, right around the time the dragons were almost died out, we're close to having no dragons left, House Lothston gets it. And Lostons were really powerful, but they so-called turned to the black arts, which was maybe a rumor, which is kind of getting into this whole vibe of, was it a real magical curse or is it just a run of bad luck? This woman, Danelle Austin, supposedly sent bats out and drank blood, and I think this is mostly very exaggerated. But there's a chance she did use some real magic. And so her line was ended. They were kicked out for dabbling in this dark magic and such. And that was around 230, so we're getting pretty close to the time when some of the elder characters were born in the books. Catelyn's mother was a Went, and that's the house that took over next. And the Wents were household knights of the Lostons, so they kind of got a piece of what was left over there. But they weren't very. They had the lands for a while, and if you guys recall, something very important happened before the books, which is the Tournament of Harrenhal, and the Wents were the ones who oversaw that. But while they were overseeing this tournament, let's not forget that one of the Kingsguard was Oswell Went, and he was one of the three at the Tower of Joy. So As a side note, it's kind of interesting that Ned kills his own child's ancestor when he's at the Tower of Joy. And then, of course, Tywin grabs it during the War of Five Kings, and the only surviving Went woman who is poor because they lost lands after Robert's Rebellion because they fought for the Targaryens, as we just, as is evidenced by Oswell Went being one of the Kingsguard and being on the Tower of Joy. So they became very poor. They couldn't. It's kind of like being house poor. They had this big ass castle, but no way to afford it. And that's when we get into real A Song of Ice and Fire. Tywin gives it to Amory Lorch, who was eaten by a bear. Roose Bolton has it, gives it to Vargo Hoat, who was eaten by himself. And Gregor Clegane.
Which we talked about 2 weeks ago on the cannibalism.
Yeah. It's a good segue into Canada. Yeah. You're right. You guys set this up nicely. And then we have Polliver, who held it, and we know he was killed by the Hound. And now it's held by Bonifer Hasty, who's not the Lord. He's just the Castellan, but he's of the Holy Hundred. So they're like really religious. But technically, it's Littlefinger's castle, but he's never been there. And let's not forget that Janos Slynt technically was Lord of it too, but he also never got to go there.
Right? And I mean, honestly, that speaks to the fact that like you don't ever actually have to physically be present there for you to get screwed. And I mean, Roose Bolton right now is the only person who Roose Bolton and Peter and Baelish are the only people who have held Harrenhal who are still like alive and well. Right, right now.
And most of them had bad deaths. Like Polliver's was instantaneous. Tywin's was like, insulting and embarrassing. Maybe it wasn't. It was quicker. But Amory Lorch by the bear and Vargo by himself and Gregor is, I don't even know how much pain he's suffering. But that's a whole nother topic. So
I mean, and
by the way,
technically like Lord of Harrenhal or anything. He just held it for Tywin,
right? Yeah, Castellan or whatever, or not even Castellan, but
again, like Tywin was literally shot while he shat.
Great alliteration there.
Considering the fact that we empty our bowels when we die, it's a very convenient place to die.
True.
It was nice of him to leave no mess for the servants there to clean up.
Which I'm sure he was very concerned about.
One thing I forgot to mention that's kind of a neat little crossover is we said that House Strong was probably the most powerful house that held Harrenhal. Maybe Lofton was. It doesn't really matter. The point being, House Strong there's a little connection there because we know Qyburn nicknamed his undead Gregor Clegane, aka the Kyborg, Robert Strong, and we know Qyburn was at Harrenhal for a little while with Jaime, and he was with the Brave Companions. So, fun little theory is he found some knowledge there, and that's why he chose that name.
Yeah, but is that in and of itself like is that like an additional curse? You know what I mean?
Like it's the curse on the realm that this place like thematically this Harrenhal, what Qyburn may have discovered at Harrenhal is what enabled this horror to be unleashed on the world. So it's a little bit of a indirect way to get there, but I think you can make it.
And also it was a concentration camp for a while, basically.
Oh God, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's very true.
It was a concentration camp. So there's that. It reminds me of like a lot of times, like it reminds me of sort of like a Castle Frankenstein type of figure, because so many like horrible supposed things are, I guess, experimented with. Because you brought up Qyburn, and the same thing has happened in Harrenhal allegedly, but also actually for like generations, where people go and get tortured in horrible ways, and all sorts of fucked up shit happens there. And I like to think of it as both like a microcosm of the Riverlands, but also like a black bear of like the Iron Throne and King's Landing. Because the Riverlands is very similar to Harrenhal. Like we talk about how it's this big ass castle, but it's a pain in the ass to take care of. And also it's surrounded by incredibly valuable land. It's because of the value of the land really that everybody fights over it. Well, guess what? That's the case of the Riverlands. The Riverlands are constantly being torn to shit. In every single freaking war, it seems like the Riverlands always gets torn to shit the most. And it's at the very center of Westeros. It's a place where everybody fights over, and maintaining it is not easy because it keeps getting torn to shit. And Also, if you notice, like if you look at the history of people who've held the Iron Throne, this is the Black Mirror of the Iron Throne part, or the Black Mirror of King's Landing part. Like everybody's like in recent years, everyone who's held the Iron Throne has had horrible things happen to, whether they hold the Iron Throne in name or hold it as like being the power behind the throne. So even if you're like not even king, if you're somebody like Tywin or Ned, you come to a horrible end if you're wielding the Iron Throne. And just like the people who wielded Harrenhal, well, they got fucked over and have had horrible ends as well. And it all comes down to me, like my theory that there is a curse at Harrenhal, and it probably will only end, or at least the curse on the land will only end after King's Landing is destroyed.
Ooh.
Yeah, I really like you said earlier, the idea of Harrenhal being like a black mirror. It's like Harrenhal is the place that everybody like knows is cursed. You know what I mean? Like the bad things that happen to them are obvious, but nobody really ever thinks about the Iron Throne. And yes, there have been, some good kings that sat the Iron Throne and everything, but there's always, there's very few of them, and like very few of them. Like I'm trying to think of anyone other than Jaehaerys, and even the ones he had his own issues.
And even the ones who are good end up having their legacies destroyed anyways.
Yeah,
like Jaehaerys' legacy was fucked over. So many of his reforms got thrown in the shitter, and his family didn't end up great. Like Aegon the Unlikely had all his rebellious children, and that eventually led to the dissolution of his house.
Yeah, I mean, Jaehaerys fucked up the succession. He's the main reason the dance eventually happened. He set the stage for that. So
yes, exactly.
Not a good look.
Someone in the chat is actually asking if the curse predated the castle. If there's a chance that the children cursed the land itself back in the Dawn Age. That's an interesting question.
Or the idea that since the Isle of the Green Men is right there, that that this was a response, like a reaction or something like that. I think it's definitely worth considering. The heart tree has like a horrible rictus or something. It's really like Arya sees it and it's like, whoa, that is a angry looking heart tree. Wow. It scares her even a little bit. And we know Arya doesn't scare easily. So
I have a theory running off of that. So I did notice when they were building Harrenhal, it does mention that they actually tear down a ton of heart trees and a ton of woodwoods to be able to build the structure, and use as support beams and stuff, while they were trying to build up Harrenhal. So part of me believes that maybe the curse originates from the destruction of the weirwoods, because we've seen in the past that like if a weirwood is messed with, it does not end well. So what's going to happen when you destroy several hundred of them? Especially when I know in the books that say they're around 3,000 years old each. That's a lot of power to try and just up and reroute, for lack of a better term.
I don't even know, like maybe we can't say it predates the castle necessarily, but it certainly could have been cursed just from let's be honest. I mean, Harren the Black didn't exactly have, you know what I mean? Like it just from the very beginning. From the very beginning, it was all very bad, and nothing good has ever really come of this. So I like the idea that, I don't know, maybe it was just always kind of going to be screwed.
Well, I think we can't discount the fact that Harrenhal being built involved the abuse and just slaughter of tons and tons of people.
Yeah, slavery,
it was, and it was built and people were tortured to make that thing built, and everyone perished within. So there's tons of ghosts, and once again, sorry to bring it back to the Black Mirror thing, but we know how the Red Keep was built and what Maegor the Cruel did to build his holdfast. And it's a very, very similar story, in fact, if you look at it to how Harrenhal was built. So, because I think that's one of the reasons these things are doomed. There's a certain equilibrium between Harrenhal and the Red Keep and King's Landing and everything. And the person who destroyed Harrenhal, of course, was Aegon the Conqueror. And Aegon the Conqueror built King's Landing, and then his son, who was a complete psycho, who probably was conceived through horrible witchcraft. We don't know for sure.
You know what happened.
He would have been right at home there.
Targaryens! Targaryens! Like, seriously, you could take an aristocrats joke and then just change the punchline to the Targaryens.
I mean, I think that's an important note where just the amount of pain and suffering and the historical context of Harrenhal, both as like the seat of this empire and like an example of both like the hubris of the Ironborn and some buildings, something like that in general, and all the bloodshed actually to create its central location in the continent. All roads kind of lead to it in a way. I mean, it's bound, even without any like supernatural effects, to have that kind of like presence in people's minds, especially when they're more superstitious on the whole. One other aspect of that I was kind of looking for something to talk about here, but I was reading something about how lead was used in medieval architecture. In particular, for important buildings, you were seeing lead being used in plumbing, roof coverings, gutters, downpipes, things such as weather vanes or like frames for windows. And gotta imagine a castle like Harrenhal, built with the level of hubris that would be implied of that, is going to have just an absolute ton of any material that would be used to build that. And I think you could logically assume that lead would be in a decently high quantities there. Safe enough until you have suddenly dragons burning down the whole place. Now you have all of this molten lead getting itself into the water supply. And on that note, I was looking through the various houses that had owned Harrenhal, kind of looking at different symptoms of lead poisoning that make
that's what I was gonna say. Lead poisoning is like really serious. Like
Maegor in particular, known to be sickly. Also was known to have died without heirs, which also seems to have been a problem with House Went, where there was questions as to the fertility of that line, which lead poisoning can cause birth defects. It can cause like lower fertility, issues like that. We could even see that potentially with Larry Strong, his club foot.
Irritability. Irritability.
And
I think there's actually, if you get lead poisoned, it causes brain poisoning, doesn't it?
Yes, which I was going to say with in particular with what's her name, Lady Lothston, who's descent into madness. Kind of tying that to there's the lead crime hypothesis, linking like high lead exposure as a child to like later life irritability, anger, delinquency, crime, and all that. And I think at least part of the Curse of Harrenhal can be attributable to having like just a lot of lead in that immediate area, probably in their drinking water and in their soil.
Right on.
Yeah, that was, to be honest, that wasn't really something I ever thought about. But as soon as you said it, it's like, oh yeah, God. Like I mean, I have not had lead poisoning, but I work in the medical field. I know the extent that it can go to. Like that's, yeah.
So if we want to get a little bit more supernatural with the theories, we can compare what's happening there. If we want to build on the idea that the fertility is a major issue, which lead poisoning would suggest, if we want to try to add or replace this idea with magic, usually I prefer to add, because George likes to do that. He likes to give you multiple reasons, and you would say, well, because we're also going to suggest some things that are probably not magical. They're misperceptions, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some real magic. Like Melisandre, right? Melisandre uses fake magic to make her real magic seem stronger. Euron does the same. So it's a very well-established concept. So take Ashai, for example, which there's apparently no children there at all. And there's these strange issues with what's going on in their water. And it's on a higher scale, of course. And if we imagine, then there's the Shadowlands to the east of that. And the Ash River. And it sounds like maybe some place that was also destroyed by Dragonfire long time ago, and maybe something else happened as well. Something magical, clearly, because it's just been like that for thousands of years. So if we compare the circumstances, and especially focusing in on the lack of children over there, and this is a smaller scale version of that, then we can blame Dragonfire, or the combination of Dragonfire and seeping, the intensity of it causing reactions and seeping poisons, or something like lead is a great example. The Westerosi version of it, could be more toxic. Like obsidian is different in Westeros than it is in the real world, for example. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not something like this, right? Like, I like that idea a lot, because the stones are hit by Dragonfire, and that would release elements, and it could also have a magical element to it. So
yeah,
cool.
I think it's probably a combination of things. Like there's, and I think, like Martin, I think that's kind of the way he writes, is like there's often like realistic reasons that can be ascribed to the way people are, or the way things happen, but that doesn't mean that there's not also supernatural things happening at the same time that they all kind of like meld together and make it just more than it would have been if it was just lead poisoning, or like, and also that's kind of, personally, that's why I love the way Martin writes and what he writes, is because there's always realistic stuff that's included in, and I was actually talking about this on a webcast the other night. Like, it's as much as I love Lord of the Rings, like Lord of the Rings is very just straight up like high fantasy. Like what Martin writes is like realistic, like it's high fantasy, but it's also dark and realistic. And that combination of a real life thing that we know about, and also just the additional, like, well, obviously there is a supernatural curse, whatever, regardless of the reason for it, whether it's just Harren the Black being a dick, or something coming from the children of the forest, like prior to that, it's more than one thing, and that's why his work is such a work of genius. Let's be real.
Like with Danelle Lawson, maybe she really used magic, but this whole she bathed in blood thing, when she also has really red hair, is just to me like, nah. Some servants saw her dyeing her hair red, and they're like, oh my God, she's bathing in blood. And it's like, no, she's just dyeing her hair.
She's just in berries or something.
We see how,
and she's a woman in power, so
Yeah, that does not help.
It reminds me of what people say about Daenerys. They say that she bathes in blood and has sex with animals, and she's basically Ilsa She-Wolf of Marine, because she apparently like has sex with men if they don't satisfy her. She cuts off their balls and stuff like that. Like it's there is like a certain level of like matrilinealism.
Better.
Yeah. You got to get that wop, 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 okay? I will find a way to bring everything back to pussy eating. Sorry.
Oh, in case anybody didn't realize, we are an 18+ convention, which is
sorry.
No, I'm joking. It's fine. I think if people don't know that by now, then...
Well, I talked about oral sex last time. I felt like I should bring it up at least once this time.
Like another fun example is they talk about burning ghosts is a thing that gets attributed to Harrenhal, but like imagine how large the rooms are. Right? They talk about how huge the rooms are, and so how like giant fireplaces. Like think of the size of the shadows that get cast from those monster fires on those giant rooms. You're like, you can hold your little two fingers up, and they're like,
how many
100 feet tall.
How many fireplaces? The Great Hall is like 35 or 36 fireplaces. I'm just thinking,
hall of 100 hearths. It says,
even if they're like tiny ones, like my little gas fireplace, my built-in gas fireplace at home is like from end to end, it's maybe 4 feet. So that's really big. Like,
yeah. It's enormous. And think of the echoes in that place. Like people talk about it as, it's haunted, but like you go, hello, and we like reverberate for like for 10 minutes.
And at times, like, at times, like, there's going to be a ton of people, right? Yeah. So like you're going to hear things echoing from like, if somebody's having, like, if every room's like a giant freaking echo, right? And you're in like, okay, let's just come like the living room, and somebody's in the half bath, of Harrenhal. And they're talking the half bath about how they want to kill their husband because he left the toilet seat up again or whatever. You're going to hear that in the living room of Harrenhal. Like, and that's basically what you're going to get. Like, you know, and so, yeah, it's going to be a spooky place.
Yeah, bottom line, without anything else, it's just a haunted house by itself.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, and we know from Arya's time there, of course, like the things that she asks Jaqen for, that he then makes happen one way or the other. You know, they're attributed to the ghost of Harrenhal, but of course, we know that's not really what's happening. Do I believe? I don't know. Do you guys believe there is a ghost of Harrenhal? Because, like, personally, I don't. I
No.
do believe that it's cursed in a way. In
I believe
one
it's
way or
cursed.
another, it is cursed. But I don't think there's any actual ghost.
Yeah, like not like a Casper of Harrenhal or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and also like when in the series, you know, the ghost of Highheart, or you know, these are never actually real ghosts. You know,
No.
we don't see like unformed like spirits in the series, unless I could be misremembering, but I don't think we do.
Qyburn barely raises the concept, but it's not really. It's kind of like vague. He says that one time he's like, I could smell this woman that I knew, like I knew she'd been in the room and like the seat was warm, but it's like, that's the closest we ever get. So it's extremely vague and that's as close as we get to it. So
yeah.
And he wasn't talking about Harrenhal either. So
no. And also I feel like, you know, like I also feel like some of that could be the sort of magic that he immerses himself in.
could be.
That not necessarily that he's like seeing things or smelling things or whatever because of that, but I feel like, and I again, like I could be proven wrong here. Like Martin could write something into one of the next books, or you know, literally any one of the next books, including the second part of Fire and Blood or whatever, that proves otherwise. But I feel like he tends to stay away from the idea of there being an actual like ghostly spirit type situation.
It's hard to imagine that adding to the story in any way. Like what?
Yeah.
That would be kind of weird. Like what's he going to do with that? Yeah, like
again, it brings me back to Lord of the Rings again when Aragorn goes and gathers up the ghosts. You know, for the final the fight at
Minister.
Oh my God, Gondor. It's
Minister.
whatever. Yeah. Minister. Thank you. I just feel like there are. Martin draws so much from other, you know, fantasy works, but like that is one thing that I feel like we can, at least to this point, we can be pretty sure of, that there are no straight up like spirits haunting places. So the Curse of Harrenhal has nothing to do with ghosts or the so-called ghost of Harrenhal. It is just because this place is a dark and awful place that has had just not very many. I mean, really, not very many good things happen. Like even the families
Nothing
that
good
held
happens
it,
at Harrenhal.
like even the families that hold it.
Nothing good happens at Harrenhal. Even the stuff that like people try to romanticize and like among the fandom actually leads to a lot of bullshit. Like I know some people really hold the love story between Rhaegar and Lyanna close in their hearts, but actually it was a bloodbath.
kind of a
It
tragedy.
led to a bloodbath. Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah,
like
like-
whenever somebody romanticizes Romeo and Juliet. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
they were like 13 and like 6 people died in like 3 days, right? Like this just is, and it's
Yeah.
not a thing.
This is a little bit of an aside because it's not about Harrenhal specifically, but I like the question. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to read the Aikenhead. I'm going to call this person Aikenhead because their name is very long. What about the Night Fort? The allegedly haunted castle of Westeros. Is it superstition? But that is a world where magic exists, and there is a sentient weirwood door or weirwood tree door underneath. So, do we think that do we think that proves that there might be like spirits in this world? Like, I personally still think there's some sort of actual explanation for that, but. I don't know.
One thing I wanted to bring up was like, I know they kind of a little bit touched on it in the show, like when Bran does like his flashbacks and like he sees like his dad at the Tower of Joy and he says dad and he's like what? So like maybe if we're going with the ghosts aren't real for this universe, maybe we do still have like that like the people in the Weirwoods who are like going back in time and seeing things. Maybe there are ghosts like because they're able to like whisper into this scene or into different moments of time that make people go, oh shit, that's a ghost.
I guess it might make sense. That's an area where the three-eyed raven would be looking in.
Yeah. I think any area where Brendan Rivers could possibly be controlling what's going on, I think it's hard to say that there could any, because how long has he been? And I know the Night Fort is older than that, and also there, but is it ghosts or is it wipes? You know what I mean? Like people further, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack about the Night Fort that I think is an entirely different like discussion of its own. And I still don't necessarily believe that it's a straight up like ghost story though.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another funny thing to consider as far as what's coming that is not unlikely, and it will add another dimension to the notion of a curse. So we have the notion of Tyrion killing Tywin, right? So that's a son killing a father. If we talked about who is still left from the people that held Harrenhal, and Roose Bolton is one of them. Well, who is probably going to kill Roose Bolton? His son. So that would be two cases of very recently where the son kills the father, and the father held Harrenhal.
Good for her.
Yeah. We'll see about that.
Very good for her on anybody humiliating, murdering, torturing, doing, or embarrassing Tywin. Like,
yeah,
doing God's work.
Tywin was a military genius.
Shut the fuck up, no, he wasn't.
I will be completely honest. The only
I don't love Tywin, but also like you gotta respect the game, y'all. It's like Tom Brady.
No, I don't. I did an entire panel with Aziz. Aziz, you were there where I tore into Tywin's legacy, like that giant, like you remember in Labyrinth where there's that giant cutting machine that goes through the, like that's what I did to Tywin's legacy. I tore it the fuck up.
Dude is quite a hypocrite.
I will be completely honest. The only thing I want in life is to have Jaime and Cersei be Aerys' kids. Just to fuck over Tywin. That is all I want.
Well, then we would have a
like,
third
I know
father,
it
son
makes no
killing
sense.
father.
I know the timelines don't match up, but that is literally all I want in life right now.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. Any more than Tyrion being a super Targaryen makes sense, which it doesn't, by the way.
Damn, just shots fired.
Sorry,
Shots fucking fired.
I keep coughing.
Valyrian
like I'm
steel
just hoping
bullets.
I don't have COVID over here.
What I'd really like to see is Sansa possibly harbor, because she is a Went and she's also Peter Baelish's daughter now. That would be fucking awesome if she harvests what she can from Harrenhal and marches north with what she could glean from there. That'd be pretty fucking awesome.
You guys remember the Sandor quote? Okay, the line where he's talking to where they're right before they have the fight at the end of the Crossroads, Arya and Sandor versus Polliver and them. They're talking about, they're trading news before that, and the quote is, "The Northern Girl, Winterfell's daughter. We heard she killed the king with a spell, and afterward changed into a wolf with big leather wings like a bat." Well, there you go. The Went sigil is a bat, and of course, wolf. She's a Stark, so that's pretty cool. And that's it.
Which would have been great if that were actually happened.
Yeah.
I know for Inktober this year, Sandrixian actually did an artwork of that, and it was really, really neat. It was really pretty.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mallory. She's adorable, and I love her.
She's the best.
Yes, we all stand Mallory.
While we're at another quote here, this is a reference to what Kevin said. Jamie has that quote where he thinks, hang on. I had it here a second ago. But I hate this bloody castle. Harrenhal had seen more horror in its 300 years than Casterly Rock had witnessed in 3,000. Yep.
Mhm.
Even he knows. Jamie,
Yeah.
3 apiece
Yeah.
for pros.
Yeah.
Jamie, I love Jamie so much. He's not the brightest bulb in a 4-pack.
Or 2-pack.
He's trying his hardest. He's doing his best. That's all
No.
we can ask.
I did highlight this comment a moment ago from Isabel saying, through Sansa's Went heritage, she can be seen as a rival for Harrenhal, which Baelish, ones right now. And then Chloe Eliza, not Chloe from Ice and Fire, Chloe, like our small council member, and not her. Chloe Eliza said, same with Arya too, which makes her time in Harrenhal like all that more interesting. Now, I don't know if I want, my God, do we want a Stark to ever have any sort of like hold on Harrenhal? Because I feel like they are cursed enough.
What if the curse is ended? That's my thing. What if the curse is ended?
All the walls just turn green instead. Like, okay, looks better now.
I brought up, I think King's Landing needs to be destroyed. If King's Landing is destroyed, the curse of Harrenhal may be alleviated.
What if at the end of the series, and because I know it's been proposed several times, like who ends up on what thrones, with Sansa ending up,
point, right?
Yeah, and with Sansa like ending up on the throne of the North, and obviously everyone said for ages that obviously she has a claim to the Riverlands and also a potential claim to the Eyrie.
Mm-hmm.
If she takes over all of that, would she rule from Winterfell, or maybe she would rule from Harrenhal?
She could rule, basically restore Robb's kingdom. I mean, if Robb's kingdom was North and Riverlands, and with the Harrenhal, that you're right, that's a great way to pass.
I've played many games of CK2 where I've done exactly that. and the Vale, and then eventually Beyond the Wall as well. If you get the
you got to keep going somewhere. You can't just stop there.
If you get the free advice for CK2 players, get the Winter's Ruin submod, and you can settle the lands north of the wall.
Oh, that's cool.
So free advice.
I can't wait to make this mod for CK3.
Yeah.
One day.
I wonder how they're going to do that, though. It's going to be a lot more complicated.
CK3's got a pretty good map maker, but the point I want to get, the one thing I want to ask is, who would have, that we currently know is alive right now, just the willpower and the sheer hubris to try and rebuild Harrenhal?
Ooh, rebuilding it. You know what? I think Arya could do it.
Well, probably. I mean, if it's one theory out there that I think has some merit is the idea that it will be a place where humanity gathers if the others have advanced really far south, especially if you take Daenerys's vision of melting an army of ice on the Trident or whatever. So Harrenhal's right there. It's big enough for like everybody to pack in there. So if something like that happens, then that's a kind of a thematic or climactic situation, I suppose. And you get also, if we think about the foreshadowing potential from a place like the Dance of the Dragons, where Aemond and Daemon fight over where the D belongs, over the God's Eye there, and the two dragons die right there. So there's just lots of things pointing to Harrenhal being important in the historical foreshadowing and in the foreshadowing in the books. It's like the number 4 most visited location. Like we have Winterfell, we have King's Landing, we have the Wall, and the next would be Harrenhal. Like that's the place we've seen the most, besides those top 3. King's Landing, Winterfell, the Wall, and then Harrenhal's next.
I never thought about that. Like I never realized how much time we've actually spent at Harrenhal.
Yeah, almost like a ton of different POVs have been there and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I knew about all the POVs that have been there, and like I know all the chapters and stuff, but it wasn't until you're like, yeah, it's like number 4, and I'm like, wait, hold on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that the Riverlands are so important. I feel like a lot of times people like to discount the Riverlands for some reason, even though at least 30% of the freaking series occurs in the Riverlands. Someplace in the Riverlands. And like a bunch of the POV characters are Tullys by blood, if not in name. So like all the Stark kids are half Tully. And also Quarter Went. As we've discussed. And we've got Catelyn, of course. Like it's the Riverlands are just this huge battleground for everything. And that's why, like, I brought up, like, how Harrenhal is, in addition to being a black mirror for, like, King's Landing and the Red Keep, is also, like, the microcosm of the Riverlands. So, yeah, like, it's so important, and it's so, like, vital to everything. Also, it's where so much stuff began, too. Not just in terms of, like, the main conflict, but, like, a lot of the inciting incidents. It's where, you know, Robert's Rebellion happened. It's, you know, it's vital.
It's where they had the Great Council after.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Great Council. Yeah, it's true, and that's going to be like. There's a decent chance it's like Great Council is one of the huge things that is foreshadowed in history that hasn't happened yet. We saw it at the end of the show, so it's like, yeah, there's probably going to be a Great Council.
Yeah, at the end of the show,
it was like the mini council.
It'll be greater probably in the books.
The great.
Sit down, Uncle.
It'll be great in the way the Wonderful Wizard of Oz was a wonderful wizard. Okay.
And if King's Landing is more thoroughly destroyed in the books, then Harrenhal would be like a decent spot to do that again. So yeah, like you're right. There's so many events set up there. The tournament, the Night of the Laughing Tree incident. Like, yeah, it's so rich.
And literally nothing good ever comes of these things. Literally nothing. Like, can you name one good thing that came from Harrenhal?
No,
and that's really important, right? Like like we talk about whether the curse is real or not, but like Westeros thinks there's a curse, and that has power in it of itself. That belief, that power of belief that everyone pretty much thinks of it as in that light means it's somewhat true, even if it's not literally true. Just the power of belief makes it that strong.
I mean, I'll be honest, like personally, ghost or no ghost, and again, I don't think there's a ghost situation going on. I do think there is a curse because I agree that the power of just everybody believing that it is cursed is one thing. There are things that happen there that like it is I don't know. Like there's no way really to describe it other than that it has to be cursed. It has to be like some things that happen are kind of obvious. Like honestly, like everything that happened with like Vargo Ho and whatever, like the things most of the things actually that have happened in like the recent books, that's one thing. But it's like even the family that held it the longest came to ruin, you know, like and again, like the tournaments that have been held there led to nothing but bad things. So I just feel like, yeah, the curse itself has to be a real thing. Why it came about or exactly when it came about is contestable, I suppose. But I do think that, you know, this is still a fantasy world and things like curses do still kind of exist, I guess, in my opinion.
One thing I wanted to add to the conversation a little bit earlier about anything good that might have came out of Harrenhal might be a bit roundabout, but I think you could argue that like the destruction of Harrenhal was really the moment that the Targaryen dynasty really gained the kind of legitimacy necessary for them to really turn Westeros from a collection of warring kingdoms into an actual empire, more or less, or overlord king, high kingdom, whatever you want to call it. Of course, that's arguable, but it definitely did probably on the whole make Westeros far more stable and having a lot less bloodshed.
I like our thesis we're developing here, which is something that looking at an old essay I wrote a long time ago, I realized is my conclusion, that Harrenhal is the curse, not whether the question isn't necessarily is it cursed. It's cursed in that it is a curse on Westeros. Like as you said, nothing good has come from it. It's not necessarily what happens there. It's the things that it spreads everywhere else too, and of course, and the things that happen there. Like another really minor example. I don't think we can pin it on this, but like Brienne has had some pretty bad luck in her quest, and what shield is she carrying around? A Lothston shield painted over. So like even that's like true. Not necessarily a literal curse, but it's like everything.
Everything ties to this. With it. Everything it touches is bad.
Everything it touches, it's the anti-Midas touch. It's the windowless van of Westeros everywhere it goes.
It's driving around like, I'm Harrenhal. I can give you candy. Look at all this candy I have, all this land. It's very fertile, but also I'm shady as fuck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Littlefinger is the Lord of Harrenhal now, and he is the driver of the windowless van of Westeros.
He invented the windowless van of Westeros. Like
he
was like, "Listen,
TARDIS.
guys,
That's
we
why
got
he
to
gets
fuck it up."
everywhere during the show. That's how he gets everywhere during the show. He can go wherever the hell he wants at any point
with a
in time.
jetpack on.
It's not the TARDIS, it's a windowless van.
It's a windowless TARDIS. The windowless TARDIS van.
Oh my god. Stop. It's a van painted like the TARDIS, to trick people into thinking it's fine.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm just imagining the 10th Doctor driving around in a windowless van trying to pick up all of his companions.
I'm sorry, you guys. I've got very little sleep this week. I'm giddy right now.
I think it's improving things.
It's making it a lot more interesting.
I mean, honestly, I love like just continually evolving these stupid fandom things that we come up with. So I don't want to actually stupid. They're not stupid. We're all super.
They're just
intelligent
fun
people. Yeah. Oh God. I want to highlight this comment from John Hagee, but I'm just not going to because it's super. No, whatever. I don't care. There we go.
The Biden.
Okay, but that is true though.
Nice.
That is it in like mythology. That is true. The two-pronged fork is the sign of Hades, and the three-pronged fork is the sign of Poseidon.
Okay, cool.
Right. And I mean, I guess like. Poseidon is a Viking. So,
like read a book. He is.
Okay,
so
let's be real here. None of the gods are straight. All of them fuckers are gay.
No, Hades, I'm pretty sure was actually straight because he never cheated on Persephone.
Aggressively straight.
Aggressively
He's
straight.
trying his best.
Zeus is probably aggressively straight. Yeah.
Zeus gets that. Even when there isn't a WAP, he'll rain on the latest WAP with a shower of gold, and it becomes a WAP.
So Lonely Cat says Harrenhal towers look like melted black candles, which reminds them of glass candles and magic.
Good.
Smart. Interesting.
Which is a very interesting thought, especially of what we, with what we know about the black glass candles in the Citadel.
Yeah, the idea that they're made of obsidian, they're frozen fire, and the fires mysteriously appear in these towers, and people are burned to a crisp. Yeah, there's some thematic crossover there for sure.
I did want to say shout out to Isabel in the chat because she's like laying down a bunch of really interesting facts. Like Wentz IRL is a surname.
Highlighting her stuff.
Yeah,
she's like shout out to you. Really great, interesting things happening.
We've got about like 10 minutes left or so, because I like to keep these panels at about an hour, give or take like 10 minutes, honestly. But so, do we have any last thoughts on the curse itself, like, or I don't know, whatever should it be called something else? Like, I don't even know at this point.
Well,
the windowless van of Westeros.
Yeah.
If we build a little more on this whole, like, it is the curse itself, or it is a curse, if not the biggest curse, then we kind of summarize all the things that make it that by focusing on the things that Westeros considers the worst. Does it reflect or inspire or include kinslaying? Absolutely. We've discussed that, and there's more examples of that. Does it involve cannibalism? Definitely. Does it involve treason? Again, absolutely. There's all sorts of flipping and back and forths, and does it involve like black magic as well? Dark magic? Yep. So
does it involve hair care? Yes.
Does it involve
strong,
sexism?
powerful women?
Yes.
Yes, it actually does. There's actually a thread of women ruling in Harrenhal too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got everything. So it's like George packed all the like dark themes in there, like kinslaying, tragedy, curses, like all of it. So yeah, like authorially, the pattern is pretty strong here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously there is some sort of curse. And like I said, I don't believe that it is just because the people of Westeros believe that it is cursed. I believe there is something going on there beyond just, oh, well, people believe it's cursed, so bad things happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
bad
it's
things
not.
literally just happen there.
Yeah.
So I as much as we can kind of shove aside the like ghost of Harrenhal idea, the idea that being cursed is, and I to be honest, I don't know if I'd ever really thought about the fact that it might have been cursed prior to, you know, Horn the Black, like kind of just tearing down the land around it to like I didn't really think that might be where the curse came from, I guess. But that makes, and that's part of, like, honestly, that's probably part of the reason of why that is, because I read like World of Ice and Fire once, and it's not really a book you like reread over and over again. But
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
I'll be completely honest. I read it in the wiki page. I was like, let's get some quick info real fast here. And I'm like, oh wait, I forgot about that.
I like using the wiki as a reference. To be honest, I do.
I do too, except for the time that I read it. I was looking up something like very basic about Catelyn Stark, about 2/3 of the way through Storm of Swords, and read about the Red Wedding like 2 chapters before I read the actual Red Wedding. So that was really bad. Lonely Cat is asking, are the beams made of weirwood? I honestly don't remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the beams and like the supports inside the castle itself were made of weirwood.
Yeah, and that's not good, by the way, because
a lot of weirwood.
You kill the weirwood, you mess with the old gods, and the old gods will mess back with you. Ooh.
One thing I did want to bring up is like, obviously, like all the destruction and stuff that happened, just even leading up to them building this massive castle. The land remembers, even if the people don't. The land always remembers. And like going like real world here, like if you go to like certain places where like horrible stuff happens, you can feel it. Like it obviously, like it could have happened like 120 years ago, or it could have happened yesterday. Like you can feel it. There's like a definite change when you're walking through like a battleground. So even if there isn't like a curse that's actively affecting it, if you're walking there and you're walking through Harrenhal, I feel like you are still feeling that after effect of the land being like, this is what happened. If you don't want to remember it, we will.
Well, and that kind of brings it back to what Kevin was talking about with the lead poisoning. I guess that was less about maybe the land, but like it brings it back to like what is built into like the walls of this castle, and just the fact that it's poison. It's poison. So maybe instead of saying it's cursed, it should be just described as being poison. Like, is there a supernatural curse? Very possibly, because of the destruction of the weirwoods that it cost to build it. But also, even if it wasn't supernaturally cursed, it's definitely poison in more ways than one.
We should have had Isabel on this panel, by the way, because Isabel is just.
I know, right?
Yeah, she's.
My dumbass should have been here. It should have been Isabel.
I don't know if I know Isabel, but like I agree.
Hit us up. Hit us up.
Yeah, add us at Ice and FireCon on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, pretty much everything.
So okay, so like we don't have to wrap up right in an hour, but like I'm kind of done with what I have to say. One by one, do you guys have any last thoughts, Elena?
I don't really have anything else to add on. I kind of like laid down my theories, my interesting random facts. I was going to ask if anybody in the chat had any questions, to go ahead and like throw them out there so we can kind of do like this for the wrap up, because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Wendy, any last thoughts?
Well, I had another really funny joke about a metaphor for Harrenhal, but now I forgot what it was. So I'm just gonna head that off. Maybe I'll announce it on Twitter. So just follow me on Twitter.
All right, Kevin.
I leave on this thought. Harrenhal was really built by a horrible person.
Oh my god, I thought you were gonna say something really. I thought you were gonna say something really like just stupid and joking right there. I was like waiting. I was waiting. I was waiting for like a dumb joke, and I was like, oh,
It was
He
in
did
there,
a low
too.
key. He definitely did. It was a low key pun.
the stupid person. The stupid person. Yeah. I was waiting for something bigger, like more explosive. All right, Aziz, this way.
Well, yeah, I think we did get a good job of parsing the different ways to think about a curse, whether supernatural, whether perceptional, whether thematic / symbolic. And I think those are good ways to think about it. And going forward, when we read about Harrenhal more, we have a great idea of what to be aware of and what possibilities there are. And that is really fun to know going into the Winds of Winter, that when we encounter Harrenhal, we'll be ready with our thoughts, and that's fun. It's good to have it all down.
Yeah, I do love the idea of it being a sort of one of the places where they make some sort of stand or last stand. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, honestly, because
May not go well. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not go well.
Because
There's a lot of
Harrenhal.
destruction between the wall and Harrenhal. Then
Yeah,
it'll
true.
get real ugly.
The implication is pretty.
But for all we know, like the Isle of, what is it, the Isle of Faces and the God's Eye, there could be like some sort of rallying to the cause. You know what I mean? Like fingers crossed, I guess. I don't know how much I want anybody to rally around here.
We just gotta give Arya enough time to jump from the sky.
It's like rallying around the Red Sox before they broke that curse, All right. Well, I'm going to end this because we're right a little over an hour. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for all of your lovely comments and input. And thank you guys for joining so much. We will, maybe do some virtual content. Definitely not for the rest of this year, no offense. But, leading up to hopefully Ice and FireCon 2021. So
Please support them by the way.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Wear masks, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, stay safe, social distance, etc., etc., etc. And
don't get cursed.
Yeah, don't get cursed.
Don't get blood into your mortar.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Good night, y'all.
Thanks.
Bye,
guys.
Bye.